So after those technical difficulties, yeah, hey, if you all hear, remember, for all of you out there, if there's something weird you're hearing or seeing or not hearing or seeing, please let me know. If the stream crashes, I need to... Also, hi, Bane. Good to see you. I need to know because Streamlabs does not tell me. The stream will crash and I will still show as broadcasting. So please always communicate. And Bane, I know you're like, well, the problem is Streamlabs. I just need the time to get into regular OBS and play around with it. But yeah, I don't know what's happening with the player right now. So, while the stream is live again, and we're not having feedback loops of music, and everything is where it needs to be, why don't we stare into an infinite void of monster space and slowly go insane? Yeah? Alright. Right, but it's also... it's me getting to understand it. Which it may very well be similar, but I need to sit down and learn it all the same. So that way it's not just click a button and import. Anyway, so what are we doing except slowly going insane, and becoming frustrated. This is immersion, everyone. This is immersion into Call of Cthulhu. Well, look, it's a managed decline, Bane. Come on. It's a managed decline. Now, if we're going to be talking about magic, as that's the last rules portion that we're going to touch upon here in our exploration of the book. Let's get some... We're going to switch over to a track called Warlock's Whisper. Because there is a great old one Warlock patron in D&D. And I think that this will work because that patron grants us magic. Now, are we going to get Eldritch Blast if we cast magic in Call of Cthulhu? And what is magic? In a world where you lose sanity for seeing things that shouldn't be, how is it that people can have magic? Are you a wizard, Harry? No? I'm sorry to hear it. It took an extreme measure there, Bane, but hopefully whatever treatment they were able to give you was able to remedy that and bring that down. Well, if your feet are up or down or however they need to be to do what they're going to do, let's talk about magic. The magic of the Cthulhu mythos stems from the unfathomable alien intelligences that reside outside of humanity's ability to comprehend. What may be the pinnacle of science can easily be interpreted as magic by the ignorant. What is certain is that those who delve into such matters rarely come away unchanged, usually for the worse. Manipulating time and space is not a thing to be done lightly, and there can be grave consequences for those investigators who dabble in things best left alone. Mythos magic is variable and was not tightly defined by H.P. Lovecraft. Each occurrence of magic serves a particular story rather than fitting some consistent overarching structure. However, some generalizations can be made. Mythos magic is traditional in scope, centering on perilous summoning of horrible entities and the desperate manipulation of inimical forces. Spells are formally constructed. One wrong word or gesture can disrupt the spell at best, or cause it to go horribly wrong at worst. Few mythos spells can be performed quickly. Da-da-da-da. And Drakdoda, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the Hero Zone. We are now one cultist closer to summoning Tiamat. Because remember, when we hit 4,000 followers, I'm going to be announcing an event we're going to run through the Twitch channel and our Discord, ! Discord in chat, that will see this Gargantuan Tiamat end up in one of your all's games or play spaces or wherever. Though rare for investigators, cultists and sorcerers may be taught spells by their fellows, or even granted magical visions, knowledge, and spells through abhorrent communion with the dark gods of the Cthulhu mythos. Investigators wishing to find a fast track for learning spells are more likely to find a one-way ticket to an asylum, their minds broken and sanity destroyed. Spells must be approached warily, since often their costs and effects are initially unknown to the spellcaster. For investigators, mythos magic can be a dangerous trap, for in using it, investigators lose sanity points and gain Cthulhu mythos knowledge, becoming more like those whom they seek to defeat. Mythos magic bewilders, shocks, disorients, and debilitates its human practitioners. Mankind was not meant to know such things, and with enough exposure, the psychic and physical contradictions involved in using magic drive humans insane. Investigators will mostly experience magic from outside sources, either by being the target or by witnessing the effects of spells cast by someone else. An investigator rarely becomes a mage, since the requisite knowledge and experience usually leads to madness first. Whether investigators gain much by knowing the magic of the Cthulhu mythos, they often risk much when attempting to use it. Spells learned while playing published scenarios may prove useful only in the course of a single adventure. Consequently, though all players are invited to study this chapter, it is only keepers who will benefit most from it when planning adventures and creating suitably objectionable adversaries. What is magic? Gilman had some terrible hints from the dreaded Necronomicon of Abdul al-Hazred and the suppressed Unosprakkelen Kulten of von Juntz to correlate with his abstract formulae on the properties of space and the linkage of dimensions known and unknown. H.P. Lovecraft, The Dreams in the Witch House. After World War I, astronomers confirmed that the 30 or 40,000 light years of easily observed stars nearest to us comprised only a minor corner of the universe. There was not one Milky Way as astronomers had once believed, but rather thousands and millions of galaxies, most so faint and so distant that the truth of the nebulae had long been argued, but never before solved. The notion of island universes, galaxies, as we now say, was a bombshell. In the 1920s, humanity's perception of the unbounded universe's true size increased by orders of magnitude. Writing as such discoveries took place, Lovecraft gradually evolved a background myth incorporating such discoveries and added some flavorings from Einstein and Planck. These new universes, so he appears to have been speculated, were truly islands. Their separation included their natural laws. Isolated by hundreds of thousands or millions of light years, the stuff of life could differ wildly. Very quickly, these islands also took on a Riemannian association of existing in or being connected to other dimensions. The magic of the Cthulhu mythos is the unifying logic of this universe of universes. Magic works everywhere. It models and defines the greater reality. It is the ultimate expression of natural law, the will of the outer gods made palpable and the arbiter of time, space, and matter. In comparison, earthly science and religion seem of little avail, Apparently, we understand far less than we flatter ourselves as knowing. Is imperfection in what we believe or in how we have come to believe it? Perhaps there is a poverty in our souls or our mathematical equations that forestalls ultimate knowledge and revelation. The mythos mocks human pretensions. So, over the course of a story, it's similar to as you would read in a novel. You have someone, a simple librarian, who may even have a fascination with the occult, but where does that actually lead? Until one day, you find that book, you hear the chanting from the secret meeting, or something that is, it gets introduced through books or agents in some other way. A lot of this is flavor. Again, this is mostly stuff for the keeper to consider when writing out the story, when planning for it, accounting for interactions with creatures or sanity loss, about the powers actually wielded by the spell that could fall into the hands of the party. So this is going to go into how do you open that book? Ye intruders beware. That kind of a thing. Although that was a treasure map. But what an adventure that led on. And that could also get very Cthulian very quickly. I don't want to get into the minutia of this. Oh, like, how do you read a book filled with ancient secrets and magic? It's here. It might very well come up. And if it does, follow along or customize the experience of glancing into a book of horrible truths, a full study of it. Maybe this is part of you wanting to develop your character in a way of you actually want to become a sorcerer, if only to wield the magics against your foes. Because unlike them, you can control it, right? Maybe. And of course, here we have poor Harvey is continuing his delve through various situations. For those of you reading along at home, by the way, in your Keeper rulebook, we're on 175. Increasing the Cthulhu Mythos skill widens the horizons of the student, but chips away at mental reserves. However, learning about the mythos may also let the scholar change reality in specific ways. These packets of information are organized as spells. They require activation measured in the game by magic points. Magic points must, in most cases, be expended to cast spells, as well as to energize artifacts, power magical gates, and so on. An investigator begins the game with magic points equal to 1/5 his or her power. However, cultists and powerful sorcerers often have larger pools of points from which to draw. Once an individual is out of magic points, any further expenditure is deducted directly from hit points. Any such loss of hit points will manifest as physical damage in a form chosen by the keeper, perhaps sores and cuts opening on the body, skin blistering, or blood running from the eyes or ears. Spending or sacrificing magic points or points of power takes only the will of the owner. Doing so may leave sensations of pleasure mingled with regret, a numbness of the soul, or may not be noticeable at all. The spellcaster's essence or energy is channeled into powering the spell. Some magical attacks leech magic points or power from unwilling targets. In those cases, loss may be characterized as being painful, or as leaving a headache, or other minor symptoms. Involuntary loss of 10 power would be a stronger sensation than that of losing the same amount of magic points. If magic points reach 0, the investigator deducts further magic point loss from hit points, 1 for 1. Regeneration of magic points is a natural function, returning at 1 magic point per hour, 2 per hour for those with power over 100, 3 points if power is over 200, and so on. The number of magic points cannot regenerate to a value above 1/5 of the character's power. Magic points lost as hit points are healed according to the rules for wounds and healing. It's a couple chapters up. We did touch on that. Learning a Mythos spell does not cost sanity points. However, casting a Mythos spell does. Any individual can learn a spell. Studying the Mythos is the last thing a person should do, since increasing Mythos knowledge always brings the character closer and closer to the time when insanity or the Mythos stakes its claim. Sometimes circumstances demand such sacrifice. Knowledge of a spell can be transferred in 3 ways listed below. Learning from a book, learning from another person. Oh, did I miss? I missed it, sorry. Learning from a Mythos entity. Again, I'm not going to get into reading every little sentence here. You know that it's here. We're talking about it. We're reviewing it. Oh, by the way, hi, Tio. Welcome. Know that it is here for you to access and reference. Should you start delving into the Mythos? You want to learn a spell as an investigator, or maybe you actually do want to incorporate a little bit of magic into your next Call of Cthulhu game. You did the Haunted House run. You did some other, some basic stuff. And now you want to get a lot more metaphysical and not just mysterious. Manipulating the forces of the Cthulhu mythos leads to a loss of sanity points in amounts that vary by spell. If some awful creature arrives in response to a spell, encountering it costs yet more sanity points. Having no sanity points does not prohibit spells from being cast. If it did, there would be no cultists. Nearly all spells and many magical artifacts also require magic points to be expended. Otherwise, the spell does not activate, nothing happens. Physical components may be necessary for particular spells. Such components may be reusable. For example, the great menhirs necessary for summoning he who is not to be named. Other components may be consumed during the. Oh my goodness, JT Stark, good to see you. Welcome. Thank you for bringing gotta run. All right, thank you very much, JT. Can I get a quick shout out to JT Stark for coming in with that raid? I hope you had fun. Thank you for visiting us here in the Hero Zone. But go do your things, JT. The time required to cast a spell is variable. It may be instantaneous, a few seconds, a game minute, a game week, or longer. The caster must know the spell and recite a sometimes complex and lengthy chant, or write in authoritative tones. Usually the caster must have complete freedom of movement, since gesture can be as important as chant. A casting roll is required when a character attempts to cast a newly learned spell for the first time. Once a spell has been successfully cast, subsequent uses do not require a casting roll. Non-player characters and monsters who do not need to make casting rolls. A hard power roll is required to successfully cast a spell for the first time. If the casting roll is successful, refer to the spell description for the outcome. If the casting roll has failed, nothing happens. Following a failed casting roll, the character has a choice whether to make a second attempt to cast the spell, either immediately or at any time in the future, and in doing so, push the casting roll. If the pushed casting roll is successful, the spell works normally without negative consequences. If the pushed casting roll is failed, the spell still works normally, but dire consequences ensue for the caster. Ultimately, a spell can always be cast. The casting roll gauges the harm the caster suffers in the process rather than the success or the failure of the spell. We take this for granted in D&D, right? Oh, I cast all the. I just snap my fingers. Magic is second nature. No one really questions it. It just happens. It's there. It's everywhere. Well, in a world where magic shouldn't exist, there's a little bit more to casting magic, bringing it into reality. That's even after you've investigated and found the source of it and that you've learned it. The only alternative to this, other than giving up on the spell, is to go back to the source and learn the spell again from scratch, usually requiring another 2d6 weeks and a hard intelligence roll. After relearning the spell, another initial casting roll may be made. This is a much more cautious approach than pushing the casting roll. This is one of the reasons why wizards seek to extend their lives. Miscasting the greater spells can be a fast route to the grave. Wait a minute. Matthew's initial attempt to cast the contact ghoul spell has failed. Well, Matthew, you gotta get good. Come on. So, effects for this. Again, not a chart that you have to memorize. In many instances, if you're a keeper, you want to introduce a spell, it might just be there. And you don't have to go through every step to get it. It's there. And especially if it's on a monster or an NPC like a cultist. Even the book said you can cut out a lot of this. They've already paid the price. Let's see. You can disrupt spellcasting. An investigator who comes face to face with a deep one or a ghoul has an experience that leaves no option but to believe in the cosmic horror of the Cthulhu mythos. However, reading the Cultes de Ghouls, while safe in an apartment with the lights on, the reader might dismiss the contents as a work of fantasy. This is the player's prerogative, but disbelief has its perils. Whether one believes what is read or not, the knowledge is still absorbed. If the character chooses not to believe what is read, then the Cthulhu mythos knowledge granted by the book is added to the investigator's skill, and maximum sanity points are reduced by the corresponding amount. But no sanity points are lost. In this way, an investigator can accumulate considerable knowledge of the Cthulhu mythos without losing any sanity points at all. However, when encountering evidence of the Cthulhu mythos firsthand, investigator will realize that those accursed books held the truth. At that point, the investigator becomes a believer and immediately loses sanity points equal to his or her present Cthulhu mythos score. So you may not pay for it in drips and drops up front, but as it builds and builds and builds, that moment where you believe now everything that you've amassed as some undeniable horror, as some cosmic truth, it all sets in. Non-mythos magic. Optional rules. Spontaneous use of the Cthulhu mythos skill. To do things that maybe would reveal a clue necessary for the investigation. It may not, you might get the commune with the recently deceased. This might be something that is done in the course of an investigation and technically exists as a spell, but it wasn't run as such. 1920s, it's a seance, you use a Ouija board or something. Don't be afraid to do that too. Not everything has to be a hardline magic and a rule around magic, or that it has to be tied to something very firmly. Sometimes things just happen, and in the course of you telling a story, along with not just telling to your players, sometimes having something interesting like that happen, a manifestation, but not necessarily one of malignance or that requires the loss of sanity and magic points, can keep things moving forward, increase the tension, the terror, the mystery, and even lead to the resolution of something, only for there to perhaps be a greater truth that lies beyond. Again, there's a story that is playing out with all of the rules. If you'd rather read it like that, it's right there for you. Playing the game, you know what? We're not going to worry about playing the game. That's more from our storytelling week. Not this coming one where we build characters, but the week afterwards when we're going to talk about doing things like that chapter as a keeper, about making a story, about building a mystery, rewriting history, woo DuckTales. But one thing that we can do... All right, have a good night, Tio. One thing that we can do is come over here to our Call of Cthulhu game in Roll20. Here we have a group of 4 investigators who have found their way, for various reasons, into Oklahoma. And more in particular, we find things taking place in Supply, Oklahoma. Why Supply? Why not? Now, there's a lot that's, that happens throughout history. This is taking place in 1936, let alone Oklahoma, let alone going backwards into history. But for various reasons, our investigators find themselves in Supply. Then, but also now, Fort Supply. And we had some tests that were conducted. For example, a couple of our investigators were driving into town. And how did we go about resolving what needed to be resolved? Now, I don't know if Ivalon is still here, or I don't know if Coffee Cat or some of the other players. Quingar, I don't know if you're here. No, it would seem not. So I can't pick on them live in chat. But what I can do... Let's come over to Timothy Gibbs. Timothy is Coffee Cat's character. Now, as you can see, this is very much a skill-driven game. Because when you are, well, you're not a wizard, you're not a barbarian, you're not these fantasy classes that you find in other role-playing games. You're a person. You're a person who does things. And this is the list of things. So let's say that... for some reason, Timothy, who is driving along here, encountered something on the road. Now, in normal circumstances, you don't need to roll. Really only if there's something dramatic or spicy that can happen. But we have Drive Auto. And as we see, our Drive Auto skill is 40. Rip Artist says, could be worse. Instead of supply, they could be in demand. Now, I called for a Drive Auto skill roll from Timothy. And in this case, Timothy did not pass. So, unfortunately, that poor raccoon is now roadkill. Or something along those lines. If there was an instance where we applied either because the player, the investigator, propositioned a bonus or penalty, or I, as the keeper, said, yeah, you know what? It has been a long trip, but you have been really vigilant on the road. So I will give you a bonus die to this roll. Well, in this instance, we get a... I don't know why that rolled 2, but we get a 4. Now that 4 can replaces the 10s, so we would be at 47. Oh my goodness. Well, unfortunately, it's still a failure, and the consequences play out as they do. Now maybe, just maybe, despite the bonus, Coffee Cat piloting, Timothy piloting a car, says, wait, no. The model car I'm driving is the very first one to have, I don't know, some invention that were put in cars in the 30s. I don't know. In the last investigation, we know that Timothy's car ended up getting fixed up with new tires and brakes. And so the argument is made, or the ability is propositioned to say, all right, I will let you push this roll. Pushing the roll, if we recall from the basic rules, is rolling again. But it's a double or nothing, right? Time still passes between the rolls. There are consequences now for trying again in this immediacy of whatever the immediacy is. And so Coffee Cat, piloting Timothy, piloting the car, says, I accept the consequences of this double or nothing push. I will roll again. And I say, all right, but I will give you no bonus nor penalty. Let's see, can Timothy do it? Oh no! Unfortunately not. So it looks like not only is the raccoon run over, but in slamming down the brakes, we find out that maybe one of the brake pads was actually not put on in the best fashion, and there's some smoke starting to come up from one of the wheels, or the brakes, or I don't know. Future, it could be something permanent in the immediacy. It could be something, well, until it's fixed, all of your driving involving slowing down, and maybe even turning, is going to have a penalty die assigned to it. Think about the situation. Think about the consequences or rewards. The rules mention the ability to do something mechanically, but only we as the players telling the story know what's happening, and we can modify things along the way if need be. So, later on, Timothy is talking with someone in town. You know, he goes to a garage because he wants his car fixed up, and the person there, the garage attendant. The garage attendant is I don't know. There's something about him in the way that it's conveyed. In this case, Timothy might want to use some psychology to try and figure out, am I being duped into something? Am I being sold a bill of goods? I don't know. Let's find out, Timothy. Oh no. Now granted, you needed a 40 or lower. It was close, a 45. Maybe pushing in this instance, either the juice is not worth the squeeze for the penalty on the double or nothing that I offer as the keeper, or There's really no bonus or penalty to apply. Though remember, the rules say bonus and penalty tend to be used more often in contests. So maybe in this case, while I'm asking for psychology to be rolled on behalf of Timothy, I, piloting the NPC mechanic, might be wanting to roll fast talk, and I know that this garage owner is really good at fast talk. We're gonna give him a 60. All right. Now it's Timothy's roll, but all right. So here we have a 61. We have actually failed, but it's a contest. How do we interpret this? Well, it could either be a wash, and we accept that the garage person is kind of shady, but we're willing to pay. Or you might say that the mechanic failed less than Timothy was figuring out, because the mechanic only failed by 1 and Timothy failed by 5. And in the interest of keeping the story going, such that we're not just sitting here rolling dice and letting the mechanics play out. We want the story to play out. We read the opposed rolls as such. Well, the repairs are underway, the money's exchanged. Timothy's not too happy about it, and is told that he can wait until his brakes are fixed. It's only the one pad, but it might take a couple hours. So, what does he do? There's a magazine in the lobby, the waiting area. It's an old magazine. Even though it's 1936, maybe this magazine is actually from 1916. By the way, Timothy served in World War I, if you didn't know. War is on the, war, the Great War, blah, blah, blah. And, there's some things brought up that are interesting to read now that they've already been lived out and people have moved on. And in this case, even being a part of this living history, Timothy asks for a history roll in order to better understand not just the circumstance of that magazine, but kind of looking around. Maybe this mechanic is a bit of a history buff, and it's not just a super old magazine that's been there, because no one's ever really touched it or replaced it. Sure, Timothy, that makes sense. I want you to roll history. Hey, look at that! Timothy got a 55. Needed a 70. Now, if Timothy had gotten a 35, that would have been a hard success. That's not necessarily a critical. You could read it as such if you want. But if it was a hard check, so for example, maybe he was trying to... oh, hi, Denethor. Good to see you. The answer to that is absolutely nothing. Huh! But I could modify the difficulty. If for some reason he wanted to pick out something that, maybe the article was kind of sun-bleached and faded, but there was something very interesting from his own experience and what was recorded in this old magazine. And I said, you can do it, but it's going to be a hard roll because it's, it's just more difficult to read. Now, he wouldn't have passed a hard roll, but we're going to give it to him all the same. I'm trying to bring up different rules to practice here in front of you all. And he realizes, from what he saw in the trenches of World War I, and what was said in this magazine, There is some kind of revelation, some sort of realization that makes Timothy Gibbs question a lot of things. Some fundamental part of him has been rocked. Now that he has had the time to sit down in this dusty mechanics waiting room and read a 20 years out of date magazine. Now, when faced with big bouts of horror or self-doubt or a realization of something, this might be a point in time where we call for a sanity roll. Oh, Timothy. Now let's say Timothy had his full 50. Things happened where he's down to 46 now. On Tuesday. Timothy realizing what has happened. That puzzle pieces clicked into place, and some deep truth that he never wanted to realize is in front of him. Well, in this instance, I, as the keeper, would say, even before the sanity roll, probably would have said something like, what you're facing mechanically is a sanity 1/1d4 plus 1. Now, what that means is if you pass your sanity test, you would take one point of sanity damage, right? If you don't pass, you take 1d4 plus 1. It's like deja vu all over again. But remember, there's something else in between. There is that gleaning. There is that gleaning of what had happened and what occurred. Now, in this case, right, we talked about this, sanity 1 or 1d4 plus 1. Failing a sanity roll always causes the investigator to lose self-control for a minute. So maybe we have Timothy throw the magazine down and jump up on the old bench and even like give a startling scream. Now, this wasn't fumbled. So we're going to lose the 1d4 plus 1. Let's get back over to... There's Timothy. There's this. Okay. Three. So we lose 4 sanity points, going down to 46. Oh. If we hit 5, if we hit 5, things get extra spicy for us. Losing more than a few sanity points at one time may cause an investigator to go insane, as described later. So let's pretend, though, that in looking at that magazine, we actually rolled the 4, and the 1 is 5. If an investigator loses 5 or more sanity points from a single source of sanity loss, sufficient emotional trauma has been suffered that the keeper must test the investigator's sanity. The keeper asks for an intelligence roll. If the roll is failed, the investigator has repressed the memory and does not become insane. Perversely, if it succeeds, the investigator recognizes the full significance. and goes temporarily insane. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What do we need to do? We need to make an intelligence test. Success! Oh no. We don't want to pass this test. Oh, Timothy. Because we're so SMRT smart. We have the ability, right? Ignorance is bliss normally, or in a case like this. We realize the pattern we saw in the photograph, the words set against the actions of what had happened as our service in World War I comes flashing back to us. Oh no. Oh no. Well, let's move on. This protection is okay, so it was limited. Sorry, I got to get my place back here. The effects of temporary insanity begin immediately and last for 1d10 hours. So we will roll 1d10. On becoming insane, the investigator experiences a bout of madness. While experiencing a bout of madness, the investigator loses all self-control. In game terms, this means that control of the investigator is handed from the player to the keeper for a short amount of real-world time. It is up to the keeper whether this control takes the form of dictating specific actions, or if it means giving the player guidelines on how to play the madness for however long it lasts. Alright, well, what do we do? We're going to roll 2d10. One for how long we're temporarily insane, and the second is what kind of a bout of madness we're facing. So let's go back to it. Let's roll 2d10. 3 and 10. So for the next 3 hours, we are... I don't know. What are we doing for 3 hours? Roll 10 is a mania. The investigator gains a new mania. Roll 1d100 on the table. Oh, all right, Daly, thank you for hanging out. I really like having you around, my friend. Sweet Pea, you felt like you're having deja vu? Sweet Pea, will you please type exclamation point 1d100 in chat for me? No spaces. Exclamation point number 1, letter D as in doggo, like we're hearing barking in the background, and the number 100. Sweet Pea has afflicted Timothy with the mania for 3 hours of 51. Is that Hulkamania? It is ichthyophobia. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's phobia. Gymnomania. A compulsion with nudity. Gymnomania. Sweet Pea, did you... Like, did you walk past the garage and, like, flash Timothy or something? What's going on here? Now, Coffee Cat playing Timothy might blush a little bit. But this might play into the realization that it might not just be like, haha, naked people and lewdness follows. That might be, I need to see people's skin. Because it's the things that could be under the skin. And you know, by looking at the skin, if it moves, they're there. I have to see your skin. And now, you don't have to go from 0 to 100 in that regard, but for the next 3 hours, we have Gymnomania. Timothy might very well walk into the garage to this kind of distrusted mechanic who might be working. Sees that the mechanic might also moonlight as a plumber, given that there's an almost full moon on display and a plumber's crack. Timothy, in a bout of madness, needs to check the mechanic for skin. And so, in that case, I'm sorry, the plumber's crack becomes the full moon, under which the mechanic transforms from a shady mechanic into an irritated mechanic, because he just got pantsed by Timothy while working on the car. We could consider that to be a surprise round. Now, there is a rule for rolling initiative, and there's also just going by dex. If we take a look, Timothy's dex is 60. We'll say the mechanic is not as flexible. We'll say that, he's lower, so he would go second. Well, now there could be a fight. Hey, buddy, what was that about? You can't just pull the pants down. That ain't free. And Timothy is spouting something about need to check the skin. It's the skin. You collect things from World War I. There was an infection. I know it. I was there. I had to see if you had the marks on your skin. Or something along those lines. Play into it however it's appropriate for the table. Whoa, whoa, whoa! What are you talking about? I don't like this. And the mechanic goes to take a swing at Timothy. Timothy, I'm going to use brawl here, and we're going to say though the mechanic, very strong, does probably know how to fight and be able to wrench things with a wrench even. And let's see what our. Okay, yeah. So that obviously Timothy had a 25. I was putting it higher for the mechanic. This is going to be a success. Maybe. We did roll under. Let's put it arbitrarily at 50. We were successful by 9 points. Now Timothy is going to try and dodge out of the way of the fist that was coming in. Now, Timothy has a 30, however, has succeeded, but has succeeded by 4. So we have an opposed test. One has succeeded by 9, one has succeeded by 4. Do you remember what happens? Does the attacker or defender win? This is why I'm doing the quick rules review. Because combat is opposed rolls. That's also where you can weight in things like bonus or penalty die. A little bit more loosey-goosey than just straight up skill tests. Come on, I want to show off the flowchart. No. There we go. Alright. Fortunately, there was not a readied firearm here. The surprise attack, don't worry about it. Resolve dex in order. We initiated the attack. Defender chose to dodge. Dodge. Attacker wins with higher level of success. Draw equals defender wins. Both fail equals no damage inflicted. In this case, the attacker wins with a higher level of success. We had 9 points of success if 50 was our brawl. And so, yes, it was a successful dodge. It wasn't as successful as the hit. And in that case, then, we deal damage. And if there's armor, we take some of the damage off. But let's say instead, well, you know what? Let's go to damage. You just know as an option, there's these 3 things that you can do. You can dodge. You can dodge the swing. By the way, firearms work a little differently. You can fight back, in which case you're mutually exchanging blows, or you can do a maneuver like trip someone, disarm someone, or something else along those lines. And so now we get into wounds. One more time. Number of hit points of damage inflicted by an attack can be used to differentiate between regular damage and major wounds. Someone beaten unconscious by punches may awaken the next day, battered and bruised, but able to act. However, someone who takes the same total amount of harm in a single attack, such as a gunshot, might be out of action for a week or more before the slow healing process even begins. A punch is likely to result in regular damage, whereas a gunshot is more likely to inflict a major wound. If the damage is from a single attack and then there's an effect for these. But, I don't know, let's say, it's not a knife in the back for sure. But let's say that it was just two hit points worth of damage. We would track that here. That we have 9 hit points remaining. Okay. Well, it wasn't a major wound, because we didn't take half of our max. Now, let's say that our hit points are depleting and we're down to 4 in an elongated fight. Taking 1 more point of hit point damage is not a major wound itself, because you compare it against the max. But we're getting desperately low on hit points, and so things can start to happen. And we can resolve things from there. We can explore maneuvers by going to the rule book. But this was the quick tutorial. You want to do something, it's usually a straight up roll, which sometimes can be pushed, or an opposing roll. There might be some modifiers. And if you want to use luck, depending on the rules you use, is either a determination of, is there a fire extinguisher close by? I don't know. Roll luck. Because Timothy wants to use the fire extinguisher to spray in the face of the mechanic and flee out of there. We roll luck, and nope, there's not a fire extinguisher, I'm sorry. Or, luck can be spent on many, but not all rolls, in order to bring about a success. Your keeper may put limits or may not, but luck recovery would be very slow if you were to blow all your luck in one thing, but that could be the difference between life and death. But we need to get away. A chase is ensued. We covered chasing in that instance. And the one with the written-in investigator does a good job, too. Just replace the farmer with the mechanic. But I don't know. Let's say that to scale a fence in the chase, we needed climb. Ooh, a critical success. We rolled a 1. By the way, this was not... I have no macro. This was actually a 1 that was rolled. 1 is a critical success. That's the best. So actually, in this case, we don't need to spend any luck. We vaulted it, and I, as the keeper, even would probably give some sort of extra fun little bonus in the immediacy or something like a long-term consideration. But then we need to... We thought that we lost our pursuer. But something doesn't feel right. Maybe our mechanic, who might have revealed himself to be, I don't know, a cultist or something, is hiding. Because we know about the thing with the skin. And it's important. It's important that that we spot hidden. Although in this case, it would probably be an opposed roll if we have like two humanoids interacting. But for the sake of this argument, let's just say Timothy, to find this thing. Maybe not the cultist, but it could be a way out, or it could be an idol or something. You need to spot hidden. Hey, wow, Timothy, you're doing a great job, Tim, but you're kind of showing me up. All right, a passerby comes by. Hey, I need your help. Persuade. Aha, there we go. We failed by 2. This is important to get the person walking on the sidewalk to help us, because the mechanic's gone mad. What you could do is spend 2 luck to achieve that, to pass the test. Now, until our luck refills, if there is a rule for refilling it, we only have a 48. Meaning that our 50-50 die roll is actually a 48-52, as our luck is depleting and running out. And the more we need to rely on our luck, the more that the less of it there is. So hopefully this makes sense, how the exchange of things can go. Also, just how deadly, like I said, combat can be, because 11 hit points goes pretty quickly when there's more than just some fisticuffs going on.